Good afternoon, Izzy.
Hi, David.
So, welcome to the channel, Isabella Miller. Um, Izzy is our programs and events producer with a background in journalism and event planning, having held roles such as writer, copywriter, and columnist for a plethora of different organisations. Izzy now plays a key role in designing and coordinating our specialist training programs here at Animas. Most recently, I shared the honour of facilitating the third annual Animas Summit with Izzy. And today it's my pleasure to interview her for the channel. So, Izzy, it's great to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me, David.
I'd love to start by asking you kind of what led you to working for Animas?
So I was approached by Ruth, who is our lovely managing director, on LinkedIn. I'd had various different roles and kind of freelance opportunities since leaving university where I was studying journalism. Um, I'd written for the Yorkshire Post because I was studying in Leeds as a part of their music team, sort of reporting on live events, live music events in Leeds, and other various music magazines as well. Um, so I'd had that kind of like research and writing experience and communication experience because it's a lot of communicating with different PR agencies, different people who represent certain artists. Um, but I'd kind of become LinkedIn obsessed, I think, and I was sharing a lot of things on LinkedIn to do with self-development and kind of I'd always been really interested in um, humans and how we can better ourselves. And I think somehow I'd ended up on like the coaching side of LinkedIn. And Ruth just found my profile because I had put in my profile that I had experience as a journalist, and I also studied event planning at uni as well, as part of my undergrad. Um, so it just kind of it was a real kind of lucky moment where we both just found each other. And Ruth was looking for someone to research and plan these CPD programs for Animas, um, which I I managed to come on board and take the role for that. So that's kind of how it happened. LinkedIn.
Thanks for sharing. I love that. It's like a shout out for the power of being vocal on LinkedIn, because it's hard to know sometimes if your posts are falling on deaf ears, or like who's listening to this, who's reading this. It's kind of social media feels to me sometimes like you're trying to whisper in a sea of everybody shouting, like who's going to even hear this? Is there any point? Sometimes, but it's great to know that actually worked really well for you.
Yeah, I think I forget sometimes that LinkedIn is people are viewing it with a view to potentially hire someone or to kind of see what someone's up to in their career. I think for me, I kind of forgot that and just kind of was acting like it was Twitter and sharing all, like motivational quotes and liking things. But I think what happened was I ended up on like the coaching algorithm. Um, and Ruth was looking for someone who had studied journalism at school and had a like research and planning experience, and I was the lucky person that came up first. So
Glad to hear it. And Ruth RMD, shout out to Ruth. She's going to feature in one of our upcoming interviews, so keep an eye out for that. Talking about the great work that we do with partnerships. Uh, but it sounds like, well, as we know, communication is a really big and key part of your role. I kind of wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about your role and what is a day in the life of Izzy like?
okay, so I think when it comes to planning an event or planning a program, because these are 20-week programs that I've primarily been working on over the past year since I started working at Animas. Um, and I think a lot of it I see it sort of broken up in phases. So the first phase is a lot of research. So research from my part might be what are coaches and what are people in the sort of self-development helping professions talking about, what's important to them at the minute. So the first program that I produced with Animas was the neurodiversity course. And that was for me a lot of research into the topic of neurodiversity, what's important for neurodiverse people, what's important for coaches when they're working with neurodiverse people, what are the challenges with that. Um, and so that's the part that I really love, just kind of diving into blogs, research, talking to people, and then comes kind of who are the big names in this area, who's really doing the work, who is writing books on this topic, um, who is, creating a really incredible coaching practice around this topic and kind of reaching out to them specifically to see how they might want to be involved. And that might be that they might not want to be involved in the project, but they know someone who would be a really great voice. Um, and so, yeah, that's kind of the communication part. But I suppose the day to day, yeah, it's kind of a lot of researching, a lot of reading, um, and a lot of emails, a lot of talking to people. And eventually, we move it to a Zoom call and just kind of have a deep dive into a certain topic. And then comes the sort of operations part. So planning it all, putting it into an agenda, um, and making it happen.
Thanks, Izzy. So I sense this three-step process, kind of researching it, finding out who's kind of leading that field and who's who in that world, like neurodiversity, for example, and then coming on to like coordination and pulling together a program. I wonder, I'm sure there are quite a few. I wonder what some of the, if you can speak about some of the challenges that are involved in those three processes.
Yeah. So I think something like the 3 programs that or 4, sorry, 4 programs that I've produced since I started working at Animas, um, some like all 4 of them, even the executive leadership program that I produced, all of them come with kind of a lot of sensitive. I mean, coaches are dealing with human beings, so, um, there's a lot of sensitivity around that. So I think it's kind of knowing, A, the boundaries, what's a topic that maybe we shouldn't be talking about with coaches because, as we know, there's a lot of boundaries in this profession, um, especially with something like neurodiversity or trauma, for example. When I produced the trauma program, that was a challenge that I faced, kind of trying how best to understand what's maybe appropriate, what we should be sharing with coaches, what maybe is more within the realms of like therapy or psychology. Um, so that can be a challenge. And for me, not coming from a coaching background, I've had to really try and understand that. Um, so I would say that is a challenge. I think from an operations point of view, planning point of view, that can be stressful sometimes, just kind of making sure that everything flows and runs smoothly. Um, and just yeah, just kind of finding the balance of like how can we get this out quickly and so that it's still relevant to coaches, but make sure that it's really quality as well, and that this is actually something that is going to benefit people and their clients. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like, yeah, I mean, as someone who even tries to just arrange a social event with some friends in the local area, it's so challenging and difficult. Lots of, it's hard to find a date that works for everyone, and then even harder to work out who's going to come, who's not going to come, to and then you arrange something for a given amount of numbers of people, and then it all changes at the last minute, and certain people can't make it. And it's sort of, there's so many moving parts when you're arranging, like even just a social event. So I can't imagine what it's like to arrange something like a 21-week program with, so many different speakers, and to have an idea of, who's going to turn up and how to facilitate the space.
Yeah, and I think I'm lucky in that a lot of the people that we work with have so much experience in terms of coming to these events, speaking at these events. So they've got people who are managing their calendars, and so a lot of that is taken care of. But yeah, from my side, it's a lot of looking at the calendars, making sure that it doesn't clash with other programs that we're running alongside, within Animas. So yeah, it can be challenging, but it's funny that you say that because I don't think that my friends would trust me with organising a social event, and it was a job, so yeah.
Good to know. Good to know. And how do you pull together a program in terms of like knowing which topics will go in what order, which speaker's going to cover which topic? Because I imagine some speakers could cover quite a lot of different topics. And what's your, I guess, your philosophy or method of pulling it together?
Yeah, I mean, I think, a conversation that myself, Ruth, and Nick have had is that there's been lots of lessons learned through, these programs, and something that came up for me after the neurodiversity one is we really need to make sure that each session is individual, and they always end up being individual because speakers are all individual and have their own takes on things, um, but I think especially with a topic such as neurodiversity, there is a lot of things maybe get repeated because people are looking at the same literature, the same books, the same science. So I think for me, what I've learned is to really having like calls with speakers rather than just talking over email and making sure that that this thing is covered. Really having a phone call and asking, how would this be different from this session that someone is leading for us, and making sure that everything's unique and individual. I think that that's what you were asking, kind of how to keep up.
Yeah, and at the same time linked in some way, and one follows on from the other, but yet they're also individual and kind of unique as well.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing when I each week I try and come to the sessions, and it's amazing how a lot of these speakers haven't watched the previous sessions that we've done, or they haven't um that they're not aware of what other speakers will be talking about, what the content will be, but they all somehow link. I think that's always great because it means that people can leave the programs um, with a kind of understanding that's not, all over the place, and that everything's kind of linking to one another.
I know as a for to use the neurodiversity course as an example, I was lucky enough to be a delegate and present for most of the sessions, caught some of them on record, and it was fantastic to see also like the relationships that grew as a result between the delegates, between the participants. We had loads of side chats online and also kind of offline on LinkedIn, still online in a way, but outside of the space that the course created, like a little community was born. And it was, I wonder, if what other perks of the job there are for you when you see it come together and you're present there for these sessions that you have designed and coordinated.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that before the neurodiversity course, I had an understanding of uh, ADHD, autism, dyslexia, but really, I didn't have as much of an understanding into that kind of stuff as I probably should have. But I really feel like through talking to the speakers, having the opportunity to speak to them prior to the program, and then, you know, joining it as well, that's been a really great opportunity for me to kind of understand people, understand my neurodiverse friends, understand people that I'm working with that have a neurodiversity. That's been really interesting. And the trauma program, especially, has been fascinating to me. I could talk about trauma and kind of responses to trauma all day. I think it's so amazing. And to have the opportunity to speak directly to these kind of world class experts in this topic is just fascinating. And I feel very lucky.
I couldn't agree more. It's so wide ranging, isn't it? The impact from these courses applies to so much more than kind of within this coaching container. I similarly, I've identified neurodiverse friends that I've got since the course, but have this new lens through which I can understand them, support them, have conversations with them about, say, their neurodiversity, such as dyslexia, without it being kind of based on like a very slim, maybe stereotypical knowledge of what that condition is. It's a more broad knowledge that's more informed, and I can talk about some of the benefits and the upsides rather than just assuming that it only has downsides. Which I'm sorry to say, I used to think that as I just had such an incomplete knowledge, and the course has helped to yeah to fill that gap somewhat.
Yeah, no, we heard that a lot with the neurodiversity program, I think you shared with me, David, that you'd heard of people saying how empowered they felt as someone that had a neurodiversity, and that's really lovely to hear. Um, yeah, I think that all of these programs, I'm learning so much about people, which is fascinating. And like I said earlier, I never thought I would land myself in a job in a coaching school. So I just feel so privileged that I have, and now I have all of this knowledge that I would have never acquired previously if I'd have carried on doing the music journalism that I was doing. Yeah, working at Animas, I'm sure you'll agree, it kind of makes you see people in a different way.
Mm, yeah, it's much more complicated than you initially thought, but also, yeah, it does. I remember in one of the recent courses, one of the speakers said, kind of every model is wrong, but some of them are useful, and it was referring to models we use to demonstrate human behaviors, human tendencies, and it was saying that no model perfectly fits the human experience because it's too complicated to fit into a model that can be shown on a slideshow, you know, but equally they are useful and they just give you an additional way to think about things and see people and relationships and systems from a different perspective. So yeah, it's been really good.
Just came up for me when you were saying that is I we are about to start in January the mental health and coaching program. And I spoke to one of the speakers as and kind of said, we're doing this program. It's about mental health and coaching. So people's mental health conditions and what that means. And the speaker said, we've got to remember that everybody has mental health. It's just so really this program isn't for people that maybe have a diagnosis of anxiety or depression. It's for everyone because we all have a brain. And that was really interesting to hear because it made me produce the program differently. Because this isn't just a program that will focus on like how someone struggles with anxiety or a certain mental health condition. It's who is the whole person here. And I think that's what coaching is about.
I agree. I've heard that as well, that mental health, a bit like physical health, is a scale. You can go to your doctor, your PT, and they'll give you a rough measure of where your physical health is based on, say, your weight, your strength, your endurance. And mental health's just like that too. It's a scale we're all on. It's not a it's not a problem. It's just it's a thing we all have, and there can be extremes and conditions within it, and sometimes two or three conditions can combine, a bit like we learned in neurodiversity. But yeah, that'll be a really fascinating program to be on, and I know that a couple of the speakers, I think, for the mental health course have already spoken on our other courses as well. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. We've got Anita Guru will be a part of that program. She's incredible. Um Gemma Harris Borden. She's was also on the trauma program. Yeah, we've got some really great people. Steve Peralta, he was the person who shared that with me that everyone has mental health. I don't think he would mind me saying, but he's opening that course. So mhm.
Wow, thanks, Steve. Anita as well. Shout out to Anita. I got to interview Anita and we ran out of time because we were having such a great conversation. She is such a wealth of knowledge. She's fantastic.
Yeah, very inspiring lady.
So speaking of a coaching school, feels like, you mentioned that it's funny you work for a coaching school you never expected to. Interestingly, you're actually on a accredited diploma for transformative coaching.
Yeah. Yeah, I started in November. It's nearly a year ago. Um, yeah, I joined was offered the job at Animas and I'd been working with Ruth closely for about a month, and probably chewing her ear off with all of these different questions about coaching. And it's funny, I laugh now. When I first joined Animas, I kind of thought that coaching was like Tony Robbins on stage, walking on coals of fire and telling people that, you're you're your own hero and like screaming at people. But that month, I remember October 2023 when I was working closely with Ruth and still getting to know the company. My mind was just like I was so kind of I just became obsessed with everything that Animas stood for as a brand and wanted to read all of these different books and kind of really try and understand what it means to help another person in the way that a coach would. Mainly because I thought that it would benefit me in my role, but also because I'm just that kind of person that finds that stuff fascinating. I've always been really into like spirituality, and that often crosses with coaching. Um, and yeah, I was in a we were in Coventry, myself, Ruth, and Nick for a meeting. It was the first time I met Ruth and Nick in person, actually. And Nick just said, "Why don't you do the course?" And I thought, "Oh, I don't know. I'm 24 years old. What do I have to coach anybody else on?" And he was like, "It would really help you. I think it would be a great opportunity for you." And people really enjoy it. So I thought, why not? And I just absolutely loved it, especially those first six, the training with Nishi. I absolutely just could not wait for that weekend to come for and kind of learn and practice and meet my cohort, because I've got a fantastic cohort of people who I'm friends with now, which is great. So yeah, I am doing the course. I'm nearly finished.
Hey, congratulations. And I'm curious to know, how has the reality of the course um met your kind of expectations? Has it been exactly what you expected, or has it been a little bit different?
No, I would say it was. I am quite an emotional person, so I cry at everything. Um, but I wasn't expecting to feel like there was many sessions, especially the module on transactional analysis, where I was really kind of like, I can't believe how much this is like affecting me as a person, and kind of the emotions that it's bringing up. And I don't mean that in a negative way. And I know that that's not often the goal for people when they start this course. They're doing it because they want to um, work as an internal coach or something in HR, something in business. But I think for a lot of us on that module, we weren't expecting the kind of emotions that it might bring up, especially when you're talking about, say, a relationship um, or something in your personal life. So I think that that was something that was unexpected for me, kind of how deep it might get. Um, and I think also just kind of my empathy, maybe. I think that that's something that came up for me personally, is that I didn't realize how, um, because I think a lot of things that coaches struggle with, you might agree with me, is that we're encouraged not to lead and encouraged not to kind of advise people on certain things if they're struggling with something. And I think that that's been a real challenge for me actually doing the course, because there's been so many times where I just want to kind of jump through the screen and say, do this, do that. But um, yeah, so it's been surprising to me how hard that is not to do through this course. Um, Lots of things actually came up for me since I started the ADTC.
Thanks for sharing. I have a friend who's interested in taking the course, and she, saw the journey I'm on and works part time, and thought, oh, I'd be interested in maybe taking up coaching as an additional source of income. And she came on the free introduction to coaching course, and messaged me. She hasn't made her mind up yet about whether to join the course and train with Animas. And it's interesting. I said, where are you at with it then? What have you discovered? And she said, well, what I have discovered is that it's so much more than just an additional source of income. And this journey, if I choose to, that I'm about to embark on, is going to be like a voyage of self-discovery, and there's going to be a lot of work to do and a lot more that goes on internally than, going to a course to learn a skill to then provide the skill and earn money in return. That's a part of it, but there's a kind of a lot more to it. And I know that was my experience, and it was interesting that she found that just from researching it and going on the introduction day.
For sure, yeah. I think you're right. I think that throughout those, especially the trainings in the first 6 months, that a lot came up for me personally, that I just wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting that to happen. Um, yeah, thank you for sharing, that's interesting.
And part of it comes from being coached while you're on it. You deliver loads of coaching because you learn by doing, and then you also get your cohort in the practice groups, practice rooms delivering loads of I remember when I was on it a couple of years ago, just getting so much coaching and sometimes running out of topics to have coaching on. But then I found that the deeper I went and the more I kind of let that other person into my deepest, darkest fears and things, it just opened up it kind of added so much more value for me. And yeah, I look back very fondly on training. I'm kind of a bit jealous that you're still in it and that mine finished a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, I finished the training now and it's now just kind of accruing hours and, yeah, having lots of practice clients, that's been really fun. Um, but the training is eye-opening for sure.
And what's that journey been like? I speak to some people who say, the question I know that comes up sometimes, how do you find practice clients, and what do how do you frame it, and what happens? Because obviously, racking up, I think it's 40 hours of practice sessions, you're encouraged to not just coach other coaches. And how have you found that experience?
So for me, it was a lot of, social media sourcing. So I did create a coaching Instagram, which I have since deactivated. I wasn't really using it a lot, but I did accrue a lot of, people through the Instagram account that I created. Um, I kind of decided that I wanted my clients to be like young women, um, just because I can identify with them and maybe people that had just graduated or were looking to kind of get out into the workforce after uni. Because that's me. That's the journey that I've been on for the past sort of 3 years now. God, can't believe it's been 3 years since I left uni. Um, but yeah, so I think it was a lot of kind of I do think it's helpful to think, "Who do I want to coach?" But I also don't know if that might some people might say that that limits you. But I think for me, and I've spoken to a lot of people who are my age and have decided to start this journey. I think, David, you and I have spoken about this as well. I think that there is a sort of imposter syndrome when you're younger or you haven't got that kind of life experience that some people do have. You feel a bit like, "Oh, why would someone who's 10 years older than me want them to coach them?" Um, so I think that that maybe limits me in a way, or maybe I did that subconsciously because I had that imposter syndrome about coaching people that are older. Um, but I also found it easier to find people that way because I'm on so many like uni Facebook pages and um, girls who graduate, that page I'm on, which I managed to find a few clients through. Um, yeah, so that's kind of how I've found people. It's a really long answer, sorry.
No, thanks for sharing. Is it? I know I've had that experience as well. That little bit of self doubt and internal questioning of these clients are older than me, and their businesses are more established than mine. Who am I to coach them? But then you kind of take a step back and you reflect. Someone once told me it's not you're not imparting your wisdom to them. You're not mentoring them and telling them how to run their business. Clearly, they know how to do that already. They've been doing it for years, but what you're offering to them is the coaching skill and the coaching process, and that could be offered in theory to someone of any age or standing, doesn't matter where they are in their business or life, because it's about the coaching skills that we're bringing them, not the imparting our wisdom to them on trying helping them and telling them how to do what it is they want to do.
For sure. Yeah, I think coaching is just it's the best kind of it really is just amazing for L like, if with my coach, what I always feel so heard and listened to after I've had a coaching session, and often I'll look back and think, "God, I just spoke at her for about an hour there," and that's what coaching is, it's holding space for someone. You don't need to be any age like, anyone can do that, so
Huge shout out for coaching there. So, just finally, you mentioned that we've got a mental health course coming. I wondered kind of what's on the cards for the future. And yeah,
so the mental health and coaching program, it starts in January, so you've got I think it's I actually should know the day, but it's in January, and it'll be a kind of deep dive into certain conditions, so certain mental health conditions, but it is focusing on kind of everyone. So what I shared earlier about everyone has mental health, that's exactly what this program I feel is trying to get across. Um, there's a lot of kind of different integrative approaches that people can use. We've got someone talking on mindfulness. Um, Steve will be talking about mental health in the workplace. I think this is a program for everyone, every coach, because I think it's important to consider that a lot of people do struggle from anxiety, depression. And I think that it's good that we've created a program that looks at that. But on the whole, it's kind of more, what does a person who like, when you've got a person in your chair, or you're a client, what might they be dealing with behind the scenes? How can you identify that? Um, yeah, lots of integrative approaches and various different tools, and it'll be a really interesting program. Mhm.
Sounds fantastic. Sounds a bit like the iceberg analogy. It's kind of delving well beneath the surface into sort of the murky depths, to figure out, what's going on, and be, I guess, is it a case of that, as a as someone who's then taken the course, would they, I remember a phrase we used a while ago was trauma informed. Would they then be a mentally health informed coach? Would they be more qualified, or simply just more experienced and have more of a knowledge of how to support a client who, wants to speak about mental health in a session?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's interesting. It's something that Nick and I don't think he would mind me sharing, but it's something that we've been speaking about today, actually, on kind of what do people um, who do these courses, sorry, I just dropped my pen lid. What do people who do these courses kind of gain, other than just like, I did this amazing course that made me more aware of a certain condition, or a certain, trauma or mental health, whatever it is. Um, I think I think it would be fair to say that when you've done this course, you are informed on these things that are so complex and affect the coach client relationship. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't say that we're definitely not kind of right now kind of certifying people as mental health informed coaches. But I still think it's a really important opportunity to learn from people who are um, so well versed in this area and have tons of experience. And someone like Anita, for example, um, who talks so openly about her own experiences with this stuff, and kind of is passionate about helping others. I just think it's an incredible opportunity. And it is ICF accredited as well, so there is a CCE bonus there. Mhm.
And it counts for a number of hours of CPD.
Yeah, exactly, yes. That's the
Just to add just a little personal story before we sort of close on, I've just completed the leadership course program, 21-week program, and today I met with a client for the first time who's now signed up. It's been a great morning, and they shared with me that they are struggling they're having some challenges with leading the 5 people that they lead in their business, and I felt a little bit relaxed and reassured, and even shared with him, I've actually just completed a 21-week leadership focused coaching course. And there's concepts and theorems and kind of exercises that I've learned from that course to be able to support you to be the most effective leader, and also to kind of lead yourself. Because I know on that course we learned a lot about self-compassion as a leader. And while it didn't give me all the answers straight away to coach him from day one, it made me, as a coach, feel just a little bit more confident and able to support him, knowing that I've been on a course and I've experienced it. I've been in and been part of some great conversations. I've spoke to loads of leaders on that course, or the delegates. I've heard from the speakers, and I can assure him with his challenges that I've spoken to other leaders who have similar challenges as well, and they've overcome them, so he can as well. And yeah, I don't know, how does that sound to you, Izzy? How does that come across?
Yeah, incredible. I mean, I think that that's exactly what we're hoping that people who have done these programs, we're hoping that they share with others, um, kind of the value that they've taken from it. And yeah, for sure. I think having a an agenda that features people who are so well versed and have years of experience, or even not years, but just have really dived into a topic and made a name for themselves in a certain area, whether it's leadership, trauma, mental health, relationships. Um, I think having that space to just kind of listen to someone who has done the work. And I think also what's great about the courses is that we allow time for reflection. So we have like consolidation sessions that people can kind of reflect on what they've learned and really kind of speak about it with the other delegates and put it into words. I think that people take a lot from that as well. Um, so yeah, it's amazing that you're sharing that with other people.
Thanks, Susie. It's been a great conversation today. I just wanted to round off with a final question. If someone's listening to this and they're maybe in the position that you were in before you embarked on the journey of taking the diploma and studying to become a coach, is there anything that you wish you'd have known then that you know now that you'd kind of say to them as words of advice or encouragement?
Before starting the course.
Yeah, so for someone that's maybe in the shoes that you used to be in and maybe 50-50 about, not sure whether to go for it, and I have, the natural doubts that we all have, if there's anything you'd sort of share with them or say to them?
I think I would say Animas has an incredible team that are there to listen to your questions and are so just provide valuable answers really and go above and beyond to try and answer a question that anyone has. So I think definitely make use of sup- of the customer support, but also um I would say it's definitely like even if you're because for me, I don't really know what I'm necessarily going to do with my coaching course after I pass it. But I think that having I've just learned invaluable people skills and like learned about myself that I think that's something that money can't buy really. Um, yeah, I don't really know. I think for me, it's like I felt that it was I really didn't really have too many questions about it. I just thought, yeah, I want to do that. I want to try it. Um, but I would say go into it with an open mind as well. If you are someone that has signed on and you're about to start, go like don't expect anything. Um, and maybe bring tissues for one of the modules because that TA one gets you.
Gets you every time. Well, that's great advice, and no one said that before, and I love it when something new comes up in these conversations. So thank you so much for sharing, Izzy, and yeah, it's like what was echoing around in my mind was like that old saying, "The best investment is an investment in yourself," and something that improves your communication skills, your confidence, your listening skills. It's only gonna serve you in good stead. Whatever you do with it, it'll be there, even if it's not that your main focus. So yeah, plus one shout out to coaching.
Yeah. Do you know what I was about to say? It's helped me not interrupt people, but then I realized I was interrupting you saying that. Yeah, I'm quite a yapper. I like to talk, so it's helped me to kind of like get back, listen.
Well, it's been a pleasure. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for your time today. And yes, see you hopefully again soon on the channel.
Yeah. Take care.